The new Far Cry 5 DLC, Hours of Darkness, is a good DLC, and here's why. The first question we gotta ask ourselves when reviewing this DLC, and any other DLC for that matter, is $12. In the case of this DLC at least. This DLC costs $12. Is it worth $12? I've paid a whole lot less, and I've paid a whole lot more for a DLC before. Are you going to get $12 worth of enjoyment out of this? I think yes, and the reason I think that is because you get, number one, you get a whole new area to explore that is decently sized. It's probably a third to a whole Whitetail Mountain region, comparing it to the normal map size. Probably less to explore in it, but it is still a decently sized map. Less marked areas, I should say. There's still a lot of stuff to explore. You get a storyline. It's not the best storyline. I know that. It is a storyline, though. Someone did have to take time to think out the storyline, although it probably took them a day. Or less. Or 10 minutes on the shitter. Who knows? You get some new guns and vehicles, both in the DLC and in the main game. I've already reviewed the new guns. If you want to check that out, you can click here. But you get quite a bit of stuff. It has some new features. I really do think you're not going to be wasting your money on this DLC. But I can't guarantee you that that's true because every gamer plays a game a little bit differently. Millions of people can play one game and no one person played it the exact same way as the last guy. It's the amazing thing about gaming. We all have our own experience in each game. So I can't guarantee you your experience will be worth $12 to you. Because I also don't know how much a dollar's worth to you. You know? But I will say, I've paid more than this for a skin in Fortnite. So, a whole DLC or a skin I'd use for like 2 days and then get bored of and go back to something else. You know, kind of not hard to balance out here, but I do think it's worth $12. That's a check in its column. What about this DLC? Well, if you don't know, the Hours of Darkness DLC is a Vietnam-based DLC. There's small story to it. I won't spoil. Well, I guess it's hard not to spoil the ending, but close your ears if you don't want to hear it, or just get to this time. The story basically goes simple as this. You're on a helicopter, 3 other named people, a few other people who aren't named who die pretty quickly. You're going in to complete whatever mission. It's never really said. They give you a very, very small backstory of the 3 other people you're with and tell you your name's Cowboy and you're a door gunner. That's all you know about your character. You get dropped in. Things go bad. Helicopter gets shot down. You get captured. Yada yada. Next thing you know, some dude gets shot in front of you while he's trying to ask you for a favor, which is kind of rude, but you run away from a helicopter, get back to your helicopter, grab your radio in. They're like, yeah, man, we're not going to come get you there. That's just too fucking risky. You know, we already told you to go there and you got fucking shot the fuck, but nah, we're not going to go pick you up. You need to come all the way to the other side of the valley. You know, we know there's like 5 camps, like 500,000 people probably wanting to kill you in between there and here. And you'll still only have 3 allies alive, but we're sure you can do it, you know. And you can. It's really not that hard. It's in-game, it's like 4,000 meters away. Which, in the game, isn't that hard. Here's the interesting thing about this DLC, though. Its main story is just running to an objective. And then you fight a few people at the objective. Yay, you got out of Vietnam alive. Where this DLC shines, though, is the side missions or challenges. They're really side missions. They call them challenges. There's things like taking out commanders. There's things like taking out AA guns that are stopping air support and taking over camps. The camps are interesting because they're basically a reskinned Colt outpost. They work the exact same way. You can either go in stealth or balls to the walls, slamming your gun everywhere. It's your choice. There are alarms. If they set the alarm off, more enemies come to help. The interesting thing that adds a new dynamic to these outposts, though, is the few new gameplay items. The first one, probably the biggest one, is airstrikes. You get tokens every time you complete a mission or objective that gives you an airstrike. And an F-15 will come over and drop a bomb. It's similar to Nick Rye dropping bombs. It's pretty much the same thing, actually, but it's cooler because there's an F-15. And I honestly, for something that's not really a new mechanic, but something that's pushed in your face a little harder, it's kind of underpowered. Not OP, sorry. It's underpowered, it really is. I've literally put the token between 5 guys who are standing around in a really tight circle, and they drop the bomb right on their heads, and they all get pushed back and don't die. They just stand back up, shake the dust off, and just start blowing your fucking brains out. Because somehow a plane flying over gave away your exact location. Don't understand that, but yeah, that's what happened. And I think the F-15s could have been better, could have been a really useful, but you only get 1 token for most objectives, 3 on some, and it takes 2 or 3 to complete most objectives. So if you really want solid air support, because 1 is really kind of not a very good softening blow even, it seems like, because as soon as the airstrike hits, they just call the alarm and more reinforcements are there and lickety split. The interesting thing is, in some of these places, you can have 3 objectives at one time, though. One of the camps is a camp. That's an objective in itself, taking the camp over. There's a friendly ally there that you have to rescue, and a South Vietnamese leader that you have to kill to get intel on the region. Intel is also something that's kind of new. You learn about new areas and places not through road signs or people telling you where it is, like in the main game, but through gaining intel. And you gain intel in different ways. You can gain a decent amount of intel from South Vietnamese leaders killing them, or North Vietnamese, I've got that all fucked up. North Vietnamese leaders, sorry, killing them, rescuing South Vietnamese prisoners of war, and sometimes when you take out an AA gun, you'll get a recon plane to go over, which will fly, and then suddenly in the area gives you a whole bunch of new map markers. In different modes, the AA guns can stop you from using the aircraft. There are 3 different modes. There's the normal mode, which allows you to carry 2 primary weapons and a secondary, or a pistol, and limits your explosives and knives. There's survival mode, which tightens down your weapon resources even more. And then there's arcade, or not arcade mode. I actually forget what they call it. Don't blame me. Basically, I think they call it action movie mode or something like that. Basically, you can carry a whole bunch of weapons. I think you can carry like 13 throwing knives. Carry a whole bunch of weapons. So if you're the type of guy who likes to go in guns blazing, that's the one for you, because you can carry 3 primaries like you can in the main game. You can go in there truly guns blazing, just shooting people with shit. In the normal and survival mode, if an AA gun is in the area, it will stop you from using your aircraft support until you take it out. Whereas in action movie mode, I think that's what it's called, but action movie mode, you can use your aircraft anytime. An AA gun does not stop you from using your aircraft. The next new gameplay feature is stealth tokens. Stealth tokens are an interesting take on this. In the main game, close quarters combat is kind of what the developers wanted. You know, you usually don't take sniper shots over 150 meters, you know, somewhere in there, because you can't see it because of the hills and stuff. And that's what the developers wanted. And actually, the spawn-in location for people is actually kind of short for the distance you can actually see with the scope in this game. It's not a sniping game. It's a close quarters game. That is pushed even further in this DLC. So much that stealth is really one of your two options. I feel like there's not a mixed option which is something that kind of is an adaptation for me, because I kind of use that on most of my Cult Outpost playthroughs in the main game. I'd go in stealthily, and then once either I knocked out the alarms or whatever, I'd just kill everybody, guns blazing style. You really have to choose. You're either going to be guns blazing and you're going to be facing a boatload of enemies, or you're going to be stealth, facing less enemies but still quite a few enemies. It's another interesting thing about this is there is enemies everywhere. But what these stealth tokens are is when you kill somebody stealthily, you get a token. And they're not really tokens, they're perks. They're 4 different perks. They call them tokens, but they're really perks. You get a different perk. And if you get detected by an enemy, you lose all your perks. And every kill you get stealthily gives you 1 more, up to 4. And they do things like auto-tag enemies within 10 meters, allow you to tag enemies through walls with binoculars, things like that. Things that help you with stealth. And they're useful, I think, but they're not game-changing, really. They're helpful. The tag enemies through wall is a really helpful one, I will admit. Because when you're coming up on a place, obviously, for obvious reasons, that's helpful, seeing enemies in buildings. But that's really the only 2 obvious, things that you see that's really different gameplay-wise. Everything else plays the exact same way as Far Cry 5. You have all the same options, similar weaponry, like I've been over. The thing I found interesting about this DLC, though, is how fighting heavy it is. There's no safe zones, there's no reprieve from enemies. From the time you leave your helicopter wreckage and you're told where you gotta go to get out of there, to the last second of you leaving this valley in the helicopter that came to pick you up, you're going to be fighting. You're going to be shooting people. You're going to be doing all of that. And it's something you're going to be shooting a lot, to be honest. I've taken out a camp, started looting the enemies and what's there, trying to get whatever resources I could to prepare myself, replenish my supplies, and seems like 10 seconds later, I've completed the objective. These aren't reinforcements. Another group of enemies happens along and just starts to start fighting me, and enemy groups are much larger in this game. In the main game, as you're trolling through the woods, a big group was 4 or 5 cultists to run across. And usually there was obvious places they would be located, a cabin, something like that. 4 or 5 enemies was quite a few. But in this, number one, enemies aren't located at obvious places. There are trails they follow, some of them. But sometimes there's just suddenly a campfire as you cross a hill, and there could be 10 enemies there, to be honest. Or in the area close enough that once you start fighting, they come to help. And you could be setting up on a group of enemies, getting them all tagged, ready to run in there, do whatever you're going to do. And next thing you know, 2 guys are coming up on your side, flanking you, and they make you start fighting faster than you wanted to. And you just got to start shooting anything that moves, really. And I thought that was an interesting dynamic. There is no safe zone. Unlike when you capture a location in Far Cry 5, it sort of becomes safe. You know, your store opens up, you can go there, and most of the time, unless it's an ATV spawn, you get left alone. You know, especially big places like Falls Inn, the Hope County Jail, places like that. There is no safe zone, there is no reprieve in the Hours of Darkness DLC. There is no place to just chill and relax for a few minutes, and that's an interesting thought. I think that this game is designed to keep you moving, and that's part of the reason I think some people have finished it so quickly, is there's nothing really to look at, nothing interesting, no people to talk to. You know, what friendlies you do find and rescue, just run off into the jungle and that's it. They give you some intel, run off in the jungle, and that's it. And that's pretty much how the whole tone of this is set. As for complaints on my number one complaint is Greenscale. I hate it. I don't know why developers think it's a good video feature. It sucks, especially when you're in a green jungle and it's daytime. It sucks. The screen looks very green. Just developers need to stop that. If you're looking for a comparison, it reminds me of Fallout 3 and how green that game was. You know, like that, it was a bleak green. It wasn't like a green game with green, lush landscapes that looked pretty. It was a bleak green. And that's what this DLC is like. And at times, especially in the daytime in the game, when the sun's beating down and all the trees and the grass is green, which would probably look pretty cool without the green scale, the green scale on top of it just amplifies it, and it's kind of like, whoa. It's hard to see things besides green. I think I went to sleep one night, and instead of seeing black after I closed my eyes, it was just green. It's pretty intense. As far as gameplay time, 1 to 5 hours, I would say. I took about 5 hours, and I really took my time and explored locations. I mean, I'm sure you could take longer, but I'd really put this as, for $12, you're going to get 1 to 5 hours of gameplay out of this. Plus all the stuff you get in the main storyline. So you get quite a bit. And really, at the end of the day, the Hours of Darkness DLC is a good DLC. No matter what people say, they've played it once, ran through it as quickly as possible, and said, well, that was crap. Don't listen to them. I really, you know, I'm all for you getting more opinions if you're not decided on it yet, or even if you've played it and you're just like, I don't know what I thought about that, or you're just looking for other opinions after you played it, trying to get your opinion out there too. Don't listen to the guys that just speed ran it and said it was crap because it only took them an hour to beat. And try not to speed run it yourself. You'll get more out of it. You get more out of any game you try not to speed run. I really don't understand that. That's why I take my time with games. But is it worth $12? Yes. It is worth $12. Honestly, like I said, in our microtransaction world, I think they would have charged you more than $12 for the guns and the vehicles added into the main campaign if they released them individually. So I really think this was a DLC. Good DLC. Hours of Darkness has mark of approval for me. And hey, if you've made it this far in the video, I really, really appreciate that. And I would love it if you could leave me a like. It would really mean a lot to me. And I know I'm a small channel. I know a lot of people shy away from that. But I'm trying to get this channel started out. I kind of want to make something out of this. Make a community. I feel Far Cry 5 is kind of an underrepresented game. There's a few decent-sized YouTubers out there who commentate on it, but it's an underrepresented game, and I really like it. It's not the only game I'll ever play. It's the only game I've uploaded so far, but if you could subscribe, if you like Far Cry 5, that's a good start. We'll have common ground there. I try to release things about live events. I'm working on a series now about the fastest car in Far Cry 5, trying to test out and with some detailed testing, figure out which car is the best in Far Cry 5. And once I'm done with that testing, I'll get it into a video and I'll post it. If that's stuff you'd like to see, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me, especially trying to get this small channel off the ground. You know, subscribers is kind of like a snowball effect. The more you have, the easier it's to get the more. So it's really hard to start from zero. And without further ado, I really appreciate you guys showing up. And as always, I hope you have a great day.